Hey everyone, welcome back to Front Page Bets, the FPBcast. Here after week one of the NFL season, week two of college football, and we're licking our wounds here, Gerry. Not a great performance by either of us, but hey, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And week one in the NFL, a lot of everybody trying to figure out what's what. It's overreaction week, as a lot of people have been talking about. Week one, will these be the same teams in week 17 for the NFL? And college football, though, oh my gosh, nobody saw some of these coming. And if you did, you're a liar. Nobody saw it, unless you're super homer of one of the teams that knocked out, or you just had some inside information. Because who saw Marshall beating Notre Dame at home, and who saw App State beating Texas A&M? And
I know I didn't.
Nobody did. I mean, and if you did, I want to see the bet slip. And I want to see why, not just because like you're betting Rich Strike, 80-1, like let's just, let's bet on the underdog. Strategically, I don't think anybody really saw that coming. And we'll start there, Gerry, as we're wrapping up this past weekend that was as quickly as I'd like to forget when it comes to betting. I went 1-7 against the spread in my top 10 picks, 7-3 straight up. The three games that I lost in college football were the ones that nobody really saw coming. And that was, Marshall beating Notre Dame at home, number 8 Notre Dame.
Crazy.
Then you had App State beating Texas A&M and Kyle Field. Those were the two biggest upsets. Then you also had, Washington State upsets Wisconsin, which is ranked. You also had Nebraska losing, and then Scott Frost getting fired. And we talked about it last week. There was no seat hotter than that dude. And I thought Nebraska would wait till October 1st when the contract went from $15 million to $7.5 million, but they didn't want to wait that long there. The $7.5 million extra was worth the pay to get him gone out of Lincoln. And so now they're picking up the pieces. A lot of moving and shaking this past week in college football that I tell you what, again, nobody saw coming.
Carnage. I mean, my opening week, I was 17-0 straight up and 10-7 against the spot. Last week, I was 10-7 against the spot and 5-12, or 10-7 straight up, 5-12 against the spot, 0-4 on best bets. I got crushed, and I got crushed because of some upsets. I got crushed because I believed in South Carolina, Florida.
That'll teach you.
Which I learned my lesson there. Although South Carolina had multiple opportunities to do what they needed to do to cover, and they just didn't do it.
It's true.
You mentioned Notre Dame, Marshall, two programs that I covered back in the day. Never in a million years did I think this would be the year that Marshall would come into South Bend and hand it to Notre Dame.
Right.
Notre Dame lost its quarterback, Buckner, as well, to an injury. So their season's in a spiral. Freeman, first Notre Dame coach in history to go 0-3. Boy, oh boy, a week ago I thought Notre Dame, kind of acquitted themselves nicely against Ohio State. Now I think they're looking at potentially a sub 500 season.
Yeah.
Not good if you're Notre Dame.
Again, if you watching that Ohio State game last week, you would have thought Notre Dame, okay, it's Ohio State in the horseshoe. They're gonna run the rest of the table, and they didn't.
No, and they may get run the rest of the table. I think looking at some happier news, or some teams on the come, so to speak. I think you got to look at USC, what they were able to do on the farm at Stanford. That offense has just got so many weapons. They're going to cruise in the Pac-12. Again, against the national narrative that the Pac-12 has no shot at the playoff. I beg to differ there. I think they may very well be there. I like them a lot this week. They're playing Fresno with a pretty short line.
Yep.
I think they'll cover, and I think they'll win handily. And then I think the big one this week is Miami at A&M, which was supposed to be the game of the week until Jimbo and the lads kind of soiled themselves, shall we say, a bit against a very good Appalachian State team that I think deserves all the credit in the world. But if you're Texas A&M, you can't lose that game. It's very similar to when App went up to Ann Arbor and beat Michigan several years back to kind of put the program on the map. Stunning upset, right up there, I think, with the all-timers. I put it up there with Michigan and App State, and I put it up there with when Northwestern came in as a 35-point underdog at Notre Dame when Gary Barnett wound up leading them to the Rose Bowl that year. Those are probably my top 3 upsets of all time.
When it comes to Notre Dame, I mean, nobody saw that coming in. Again, Texas A&M was a team that was supposed to compete with Alabama in the SEC West. Now, again, the SEC is a different story. Conference play hasn't started there yet, but you lose to the Sun Belt, and this is, I guess, the difference between the App State Michigan upset years ago and this one is that now they're in the Sun Belt, and they're an FBS program, but they were an FCS, a decade ago. But again, you can't go. If you pay them, and then plus you give them $1 million payday, $1 million+ payday to come in and ruin your season. And oh, by the way, pay me on the way out. Same thing with Marshall, $1.5 million to go to Notre Dame and take one from the Irish. And so if you're looking at college football, yes, college football is crazy, but you can't lose. If you're a top 10 team, you cannot lose to a sub non-power 5, non-group 5 opponent at home. You can't do it.
Interestingly to me, though, it happened just 2 years ago. 2 top 10s losing at home to unranked teams, not non-power 5 teams, mind you, but unranked teams in the same week. I thought that was kind of stunning, but I don't recall seeing a weekend quite like that one ever in my lifetime. And I think the situation at Texas A&M is going to be very worth watching this weekend.
Yeah.
Do they turn to the LSU transfer quarterback after last week generating almost no offense against App State? They're going to have to do something. They missed a field goal too that would have at least taken them into OT.
Right.
Interesting game to watch this week.
Yeah, and another one, just real quick, wrapping up the college football game last week. Alabama, number 1 Alabama, goes into Austin and barely comes away with a win. Steve Sarkisian had a great game plan for Alabama. They played well, great play call. Texas could have won, should have won that game 5 times in the red zone, 1 touchdown.
With the backup quarterback playing the majority of the game after Ewers gets hurt.
Yep.
I mean, again, when the quarterback got injured, I was like, oh, well, here, Alabama's going to just sort of wipe the field with them. A lot of credit to Steve Sarkisian and the Longhorns. They hung tough. The crowd was definitely into it. I mean, that was a wild scene in Austin. Could have been a lot wilder had they not succumbed at the end to the Bryce Young drive. He shows why he's the Heisman Trophy favorite and incumbent. And that was textbook Alabama. And what did the Tide have? 15 penalties, I think the worst ever in the history of Nick Saban's tenure. I bet that was a fun locker room and practice this week.
Oh yeah, practice.
Nothing quite like getting a tail chewing, shall we say, for the PG-13 audience from Nick Saban, and I'm sure there was plenty of that going on for players, assistant coaches, managers, cheerleaders,
whoever's in the way, man.
Yeah, anybody.
So now Texas has a chance to redeem itself. We talked about the game of the week. You've also got Miami and Texas A&M, and A&M's going to have to figure something out quickly. Cristobal's got Miami playing well. You got Tyler Van Dyke, the quarterback for Miami. He was also in the Heisman conversation preseason. They can get a little juice if the ACC now can beat the SEC in a game. You start to, now you're talking about the national conversation. But speaking of SEC, you also got South Carolina, Georgia. Georgia looks like the team to beat, no question about it. They destroyed Oregon. Had Sanford this week, whatever it was, but now they're starting to play. If they can beat South Carolina and get that going in the SEC East, I don't see anybody stopping them. I thought Florida might, but then Kentucky beats Florida last week. Now Kentucky's for real. Mark Stoops there in Lexington. So the SEC right now, it's a pivotal weekend for them.
For sure, and I mean, I think Texas A&M will rise to the occasion and get it done at home against Miami. I think Miami is a decent team, but they did not impress me all that much last week against Southern Miss. I think Van Dyke is a solid quarterback. I don't think he's quite in the Heisman race. I think there were some guys who did jump in there, like J.J. McCarthy from Michigan, for example. That kid is a dual threat talent and could make some noise. I think it comes down to Stroud and Young there eventually anyway, probably still. But don't look past Caleb Williams and USC. I mean, again, that's the other game I like this week a lot. if you want to listen to me after last week's hijinks. But I just think the line is, I think, 11 Fresno.
Yeah.
That's not enough points with that offense. And, they're just amazing. Like my question going in for Lincoln Riley was, with all these, disparate parts, how long would it take to get them to fit together? It seems like it's seamless. And Williams is a hell of a quarterback.
Yeah, they're clicking now for sure. So keep an eye on the Trojans. And I like Caleb Williams a lot in that conference, in that offense. And again, if Stroud struggles and Young struggles, he's the Johnny come lately. And Heisman voters love the Johnny, at least, some of the ones that I know, the guys that aren't always getting the hype that, because it's a popularity contest till it's not. And so, you think Williams could make some moves in the Heisman race. Mitchell Forty has that for you at Front Page Bets. Go there, check it out. The new Heisman hopefuls, or at least the way the Heisman's shaking out in the top 5 coming out this week. FrontPageBets.com. Little plug right there. Let's move to the NFL, Jerry. You talk about you had a bad week. I went 500 against the spread. 8-8 in the NFL. 9-7 straight up. A lot of teams, obviously. You had there was a lot of large spreads, a lot of 5-6+ point spreads that just didn't get it done. And not only did teams cover, but underdogs were winning. They were winning big. We saw last night Seattle and Denver, 6.5 point favorite. The Broncos going into Seattle, Russell Wilson's return, and Geno Smith coming out of nowhere.
Smith became Joe Namath. That was what I couldn't believe.
100%. And they beat they beat the Broncos at home 17-16, and then you've got a lot of games that just didn't, Houston taking, the Colts to overtime in a tie game. Cincinnati, 5 turnovers for Burrow, and they go, they lose in overtime. So
Trubisky leading them to the promised land.
Who'd have thought that? And then speaking of Trubisky, the Bears in a hurricane at Soldier Field, taking out the 49ers, who in San Francisco was a 6-point favorite or 7-point favorite.
You called that one against the spot at least, and I made fun of you.
Yeah, I didn't get the spot as well. Yeah, but if you look at that, the only one that I really was keen on was Minnesota and Green Bay. I think Minnesota. Kirk Cousins gets a lot of, talk about decision-making and what they've got a great team. Jefferson, Thielen in the wide receivers. You got, Dalvin Cook running the football. Kirk Cousins, if he just gets out of his own way, sometimes with the offensive coordinator from the Rams now coaching at Minnesota, that team can be very, very dangerous. And Aaron Rodgers doesn't have anybody to throw the ball to.
They were impressive. I mean, they took it right to the pack and took it right to Rodgers, beat him up a little bit, on top of the fact that everybody's talking about, the rookie who dropped what should have been a 78-yard touchdown pass on the first Packer possession. They still got killed the entire game regardless. That, I think, was very telling in the NFC North. The one constant in the NFL that you can always count on, though, is the Detroit Lions. They took care of business and lost again, despite how the Hard Knocks hype. My father-in-law is in tears again, as usual, after every weekend. But boy, what a heartbreaking situation that is.
Well, in Detroit, the Eagles were up 38-10, and they almost lost it.
They did the same thing against the 49ers in the opener last year. They were getting boat raced, and then they come all the way back, and it's like they toy with the emotions of these poor, tortured Michigan-based fans.
It's tough. It's tough out in the streets of Detroit if you're a Lions fan, that's for sure. This week, looking at we had the game of the week last week was a Thursday night game between the Bills and the Rams, and Josh Allen and the Bills just looked phenomenal, and Stafford was under duress a lot. Von Miller made such a big difference in that game. I like the Bills a lot. I like them going into the season. I like them a lot more after that first game. But then also this week, I think the game of the week is another Thursday night game. You got the Chargers going to the Chiefs Thursday night, 2 of the top quarterbacks in the league. And what about Justin Herbert? I mean, we knew he was good. We saw last year. Some of the throws that he made Sunday were just incredible. And he's going in as a gunslinger to another gunslinger in Patrick Mahomes. And they look great against Arizona. I tell you what, this one, whatever the over is, pound it, because it's this one, they put extra lights in the scoreboard on Thursday night for this game.
Fascinating game. I think it's one that will tell us exactly how much Herbert has evolved, and I think the answer is going to be a lot, taking nothing away from Mahomes, but that is a game to be glued to, and I, like you, like the over as well.
I like the over, but I think I think the Chiefs now, earlier in the week, 3.5-point spread. Chiefs are favored. Being at home, I think the Chiefs win at home. I don't know if they cover. This is going to be a shootout. Whoever has the ball last, and it could come down to a field goal. It's going to be an epic game. Looking through some of those other games, I tell you what, the Giants playing Tennessee tough, beat Tennessee. Saquon Barkley's back. I guess you don't need a quarterback when you got guys like Saquon Barkley. They've got this week, they're at home against Carolina, which, talking about stubbing their toe and not really, they come out against the Browns and really didn't do well. Baker Mayfield's got a lot of work to do in that offense. I think they've got to really be able to stop some people as well. The Giants turning some heads. The Jets are terrible in New York. But, you're looking at some of these teams. Are they going to be better? They're going to be worse. Dallas losing Dak Prescott for 6 to 8 weeks. They couldn't score. They couldn't do anything. If Tampa could score in the red zone, it would have been 68-3 that game. So he
looked bad before he hurt the hand, and then afterwards it made a lot more sense why he looked like he was actually like shot putting the ball at the end of the game. But Cooper Rush, the pride of Lansing Catholic High School, comes on to try to rescue the boys. I don't think so. I think they're in big trouble.
No, you got to go through your Rolodex to try to find a quarterback now that can play in that league too, because now the Eagles, if they're for real, now I thought it was the Cowboys to lose in the NFC East, but now the Eagles, with Jalen Hurts, if he can keep that team together, the Commanders win against, struggling against Jacksonville, which could be one of the worst teams in the league. Carson Wentz, 4 touchdown passes, plays pretty well. The rookie out of Penn State, Dotson, played very, very well, the receiver there. So the NFC East now really even more, up for grabs. And if the Giants can keep winning, that could be a crazy, crazy division when it comes to, who's there in December and in January.
I like the Eagles a lot more after last week. I think the Giants, nice effort. Kind of got in with a little trickeration on the shovel pass on the 2-pointer to get over the hump with, as you mentioned, Saquon coming back. But I think Philly's the class of that division at this point.
Especially now with Dak hurt. But again, everybody's going to overreact out of week 1 into week 2. We usually see the most improvement from teams from week 1 to week 2. So we'll see what happens. Are they who we thought they were?
You mean like when I said Notre Dame was going to make the playoff after the Ohio State game and then they lose to Marshall? Is that overreaction?
Let's freak out. Everybody, whatever. We'll see after week 2 who's really who we thought they were and who is who we not thought they were, or something like that. We'll have it here for Front Page Bets at frontpagebets.com. All of it coming in. Jerry's going to be an exciting football season, so stick with us. Every Tuesday we'll have the FPBcast. We'll wrap up the week games prior, look ahead to this week's games. We're doing that now. We'll do it next week. Stay with us all week long.